Follow your heart. Trust that your path will emerge for you. Even if other people find it earlier, don't be put off. Your life will find you.
Welcome to another episode of Bigger Than the Hustle, and today I've got a super interesting and brainy person with me. She's a neuroscientist, a productivity and well-being expert, and a leading international coach, as well as an author and the founder of Make Time Count Limited. Now, I know what you're thinking is, how does one person be able to wear all these hats and do all these things when some people just struggle to get up in the morning? Now, she was recommended to me by another guest of mine, Layla, who's a super awesome person. And if she's recommended her, then she must be awesome. So I'm not going to carry on from here. I'm going to hand over the mic to her and introduce her. So, hi, Dr. Magdalena.
Hello.
How are you?
I'm very well. Very excited to be here with you.
Good. So I'm just going to hand over the mic to you for a few moments. If you can introduce yourself and how you come into the world, and then we can go into the conversation from there.
Well, you've already introduced me, but yes, I am Magdalena, and I'm a very ordinary person, just like everyone else. I've got 2 legs, 2 arms, 1 head, as far as I know, and I think I've got a very big heart. That's what people say. So that's what I try to bring into the world. It's a little bit of a heart. That's it.
That's brilliant. Now, when I got introduced to you by Layla, she said that you're such a good energy and a good person, but you have a lot of wisdom and a lot of knowledge that hopefully we can tap into a little bit to try and help people. Now, you talk about neuroscientists. Now, from what the little I understand about neuroscientists, it's about the brain and how the brain operates. Now, we're going through quite a tough time still with the pandemic and COVID-19, etc. What little things have been helping you keep your mindset in check and keep your mindset strong? And is there any tips that you can give any of the listeners that are listening today?
Absolutely. I have morning routines. I think that, I do really strongly believe that centering ourselves is one of the most important things when it comes to the way our nervous system works and the way our bodies work, and particularly in difficult times. And this includes me. I've had a team member, move on to a new job on Monday. It was very sad for me. I got kind of kicked off kilter. So centering, I think, is really important. And for me, that would be sort of 3 things. An affirmation. So I'm a big follower of Louise Hay's affirmations. I've been doing the calendars for, I think, 12 years, if not more. I really hold on to them. I look at the ones I still don't own, and I keep them, and I work on them in my own life. 2, fresh flowers. I've got tulips on my desk. I think it's £3 well spent. They just kind of lift things up and, make things really, really nice. And then connecting to 2 or 3 people, telling them they're special. And I find that, sending a little bit of love out is a really lovely way to kind of be reminded that even if things are hard, they're not impossible. Mm-hmm. And we're not alone.
And one thing, especially on the third one you just mentioned there, the importance of human connection, right?
Yes.
We all seem to be living separate lives currently because of what's going on and the circumstances that we find ourselves in. But there's no better time that we can stay connected, especially with technology. If we go back to the last time this happened, 100 years ago, unless you knew someone or they were close to you, as in physically, there was no way to keep in touch with them or, communicate. And now we have the plethora of things like this. We've got Zoom, we've got technology, we've got phones, we've got so many ways that we can communicate. And sometimes it feels like an over communication. So there's too many ways that we end up doing none of them because there's just a plethora of choices about what we can do. Now, with the human connection side of things, I've always felt that it's important to give our time to the people that are closest to us. in a way, in terms of respecting the time that they've given to us as we've grown up to become the people we are, but also to keep the mind connection together, because in the end of the day, what do we have? We have each other. That's our family, our friends, and the people closest to us. Now, we can all say we're busy all the time. Everyone's busy. We've got so much to do, and everyone is. Now, unless we make time doesn't happen, right? So if we don't say, I am going to put some time aside, which is the most valuable resource I have, to give that to have a conversation, whether that be on the phone, a walk in the park, or whichever way that we choose to do that, to try and keep that connection strong and that bond strong, because I think that's what it's about. Now, if we feel sometimes there may be a level of overwhelm with the circumstances and what's happening right now, which ways can we try and help ourselves to try and calm our nerves and keep us focused and on track?
So I have a little busaba, pillow from meditation. And, I'm always reminded that when I was a little girl, I would be put on a little seat. I think like when kids are really little, when you're stressed out, it's usually you have to poo and your parents put you on a little seat. They ground you, it's the most amazing natural method of saying, be still. And I do really kind of think, I'm a very spiritual person. So for me, I think like when things are really hard, sitting down and, sometimes I'll sit on my sofa, sometimes I'll sit on my work chair, sometimes I'll sit on my little busava pillow. I'll close my eyes and go, I can breathe. I'm not in any immediate danger. There are people, and I support some people in difficult parts of the world, and and people who are really in peril, true peril. So I used to go, how bloody lucky am I? So if there isn't really a kind of absolute emergencies, I'm often, when I speak, I often say that your mind can be an ally or it can be your worst enemy. And the moments you're talking about, and I've experienced them too because I'm human, they are our worst enemy. They can pull us into despair and tears and anger and, all kinds of envy, everything. And that is beautifully human because it reminds us that, yes, ouch, we have a body, we have a heart, things hurt, we get disappointed. Isn't that wonderful? I call that living. Things are not always totally shiny and brilliant every day. If they were so, I think we'd get used to it and we take it for granted.
And our little friend, our little voice in our head, sometimes our best friend, and sometimes our worst enemy, and sometimes our best friend. And if you'd heard the way my voice talks to me on occasions, you won't want any enemies with that type of voice going on in my head. And we all have it, right? Where we are our biggest critics, aren't we? We look at ourselves and sometimes call ourselves the funniest names in terms of, why did I do that? Whatever you want to call yourself. Yeah. Now, I've been trying to teach myself or retrain that voice to try and be my supporter. So I go out running and I go on a run, and sometimes when I want to slow down or stop, the voice is now switched to say, no, we need to carry on. Just push, you've got some more energy in you, and etc. So in my training, it seems to have worked. But sometimes in life, there are certain situations where, I don't know if you get this, but sometimes, for example, like I'm doing this podcast. I'm trying to write a book at the moment. I run my own business. Wonderful. Yeah. Trying being the very operative word right now.
That makes two of us.
Yes. So I need to pick your brain about that as well. So I will do during this talk. Yeah. But sometimes we juggle a lot of things, and we leave very little time for ourselves to just sit back and reflect and take time out. Yeah. When you're a super productive person, I've had my own business for 20 years. So I've juggled a lot of plates a lot of the time. The alien thing that I find is slowing down. Taking that step back to say, actually you don't need to be doing so much all the time, because I feel that I'm not being productive if I'm not filling every hour of my day somehow. And I'm learning to teach myself to take a step back, especially with my kids on the weekend, to say, look, switch the computer off, don't do that, let's, concentrate on other things. And I'm getting better at it, but there's still times where I feel, oh, maybe I can just switch it on and send this quickly before I say, and just saying, no, you need to stop. That is fine for Monday, but we're on Saturday or Sunday evening, just, watch the game or spend playing cards with your kids, etc.
Yes.
How can I do that more? What kind of things do you think I should be telling myself to know that those things are just as, if not more important than trying to be productive?
I think what you're doing sounds wonderful. I hear that you have good boundaries, that, you are prioritizing your family and your children and time away from a computer. So you're on the way. I don't think that there is some destination to be reached. It's, what I teach people is that it's a practice. Just like if you're an artist, you have a practice. When you're an entrepreneur, you have a practice too. And actually balance is part of that practice. It's what we teach, in my work, but that is the practice. And it is so important. It can be underestimated. So, and, I think so I have become for a while, not anymore, because I think I kind of went off piece for the mainstream, being too spiritual and all that. But I have been in the past, called by The Guardian, productivity expert, this and that. But what they meant by this was exactly what you say. It was a productivity that is just all about success and work. And, I once in a long time ago, maybe like 8-9 years ago, had worked with this woman, this PR woman, for like 3 months. And she sort of said, but you're a holistically productive person. And I knew what she meant, but no one else did. And I think holistic is like a funny word because, it's got so much attached to it. But the truth of the matter is that in our hearts, we all know that true productivity is a happy person. I can see a truly productive person as soon as I meet them. They have light in their eyes, and I can see a busy person and a stressed person and, a hustler who is not that. So, but that's a phase in life. Like we might all need to be there, like in order to kind of have that awareness moment to go, duh, that's not it, and we might already get to a point where we have all these, measures of success, whatever that might be for the person, and then kind of come back and say, oh man.
It's interesting to talk about phases of life. Now, I just want to pick your brain about this. I don't know if you think in a similar way, but looking back so I'm in mid-40s now, so I'm going to be 45 in a couple of months. Now, 20 to 30 was head down, just going for everything. It was almost like I'd have 10 ideas, start all 10, and then have another 10 ideas next day, and then roll with them. Like constantly just.
You're an entrepreneur. That's what people do. I know that.
Well, it was funny because at that point, it got to a point where I remember 1 month. So August 2003, I'll never forget this month. What had happened? So the whole build-up was, I had my own business. And then, I was in a retail business. So that's, 17 years ago, there was no real internet, Google, Facebook, etc. It was a retail business that I had. I know the world existed before this. And this is what I try and tell young people, we always actually lived life before this internet thing. We actually met people and stuff.
Yeah.
So I had this retail business and I was buying the building next door to me. So that was one thing for this business. I was buying the building next door. Second thing is I was getting married. So I was planning my wedding. Third thing was I was planning my honeymoon. Fourth thing was I was buying a house. So we wanted to move into our own house. And fifth thing, I was opening another business, which was a franchise business, again in Leicester. And sixth thing was I was running my business all day as well. So all those six things were coming to a head in August 2003, which is the month I got married, the month we completed on our first house, the month I completed on my first business building property, opening the franchise, running my business, and going away on honeymoon as well. And looking back, I'm like, I don't even know how I did that. You know, like you think about all these things that, you know, talk about moving house, that be a, you know, a stressful
time. Huge thing. I'm doing that. So
you know, huge thing, right? So buying a house, buying a business, opening a new business, running my business, getting married, going on honeymoon, all in 1 month. I'm like, and then, but that summed up my 20s. It just seemed okay. I was just, you know, let's go with it. I'm good with it. And then I started working 10 in the morning till 2 in the morning. So in 2 businesses. And it was just crazy. And then what happened was that was 20s to 30s. 30s to 40s was reconciliation, thinking, actually, what's important to me now? What do I want to carry on? What don't I? And now I'm in 40s to 50. It almost seems like now I'm letting the universe dictate more to me in terms of what feels good to me? What do I want to fill my time with? And that's the metric for me now is happiness in terms of if it doesn't feel right to my gut, you know, my logic will tell me do this, do that. But my brain and my heart say, you know, my gut and my heart say, no, leave that. I don't know why, but I always know I can look back and think, I'm glad that I listened. What would you say about intuition and how we can tap into it more? Because that's what seems to be happening to me now.
Well, I teach integration. So I teach integration of mind, heart, body, and spirit. That's really probably why, you know, Lila recommended me to speak to you. So for me, and this has been a journey, and maybe we get into that, that's been my learning lesson, that if you don't follow the deeper voice, you can end up on the wrong path. Like it's a path, but it's not your path. And that does have, you know, incredible consequences that I've been studying more systemically over the last decade in terms of how you feel, how your body feels, what is possible for you, the people you meet and don't meet. You know, it doesn't mean it's a bad path. It's just that it's kind of like going down a corridor of a building. You go into certain floors and you say, I'll get out here. That means you're not going to get on any other floor. And then you're on that floor and you have to sort of go, is this the floor I want to be on?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and that's a very personal question. And that's a, you know, I do call it a personal leadership experience, because you can't compare to other people. You can't say, you know, like, oh, this other person's doing what I'm doing. So you measure out and you go, you know, it's like comparing apples and oranges. It's impossible. Because everyone's got their own sort of uniqueness, and that is really nice, you know, irrespective of what they're doing for a living. It's like, yeah, they build their life in a way that should serve them. And I really fight for that in my work with people, because a lot of people can be influenced incredibly, and I was too, by our family, by, you know, other people who have an invested agenda in terms of what they want for you. But there are a lot of life road crosses where you might realize that that's not what you want. That's not what you need. That's not what's going to feed you. And you can come alive in that sort of circumstance. And that's really important to recognize. To get that. And that's that intuition, you know, that's that sense inside you that you go, this is not quite right. And, you know, people might say, but it is, you know, this is the perfect person you should marry. This is the perfect job you should have. This is whatever, you know, and you're just going like to sleep going, and then you can kind of self-deceive and, you know, and try to keep it comfortable. And then at one point it'll hit you. And even if it doesn't hit you, I think it's a life not lived. It's not lived.
And how I've, it's taken me a while. So I'd say over the last 10 to 12 years, this is something that I've been practicing in terms of going quiet and listening to those feelings within to say, what feels right to me, not what looks right or what I think right with my senses. It's that sixth, seventh sense that says, this seems to be the way that, even though logically it doesn't make sense, but this is the way that I feel I would like to choose, or this is the direction, rather than it being destination. I think it was important what you said there earlier about destinations, in terms of it's not about getting somewhere, it's about the journey. It's about it's about the person you're becoming, isn't it? It's not about where you're going. Because as what I've learned with us as human beings, just as we're just about to reach that peak of the mountain, which is the one we've been aiming for, we start seeing the next peak before we've even reached it. And rather than getting to this peak and sitting and enjoying it was already, okay, so what's next? And that's when I learned that unless you enjoy the journey, unless you enjoy the path you've taken, there's no point trying to aim for something, because it's not that which inspires us or tries to get there. It's the way, it's either the person we become, or the person we meet, or the things we learn, or the information we get on the way. And therefore and I think it's important to point our compass in a direction as opposed to saying it's a destination. So which way do we want to point our compass? Let's head in this direction. And on that journey, if I see a nice mountain, I'm just going to stop by the roadside and look at that mountain, because I'm not in a rush to reach wherever I want to reach. And I think that's really helped me as well. How do you manage time? Now, time to me has always been the most precious resource we have. The least, it's the non-renewable resource. It's not going to come back. But I now find myself thinking there is so much time now in terms of to achieve what we want to achieve. We're here for a relatively short period of time in terms of the universe, but we're in a long time for human. So there's still a long way to go. And if you live your life well, healthily, over 100, my aim is 106, and I'll be open with that. I know that's possible.
Yes.
What's your aim in terms of first of all, how do you use your time? How do you be so productive without feeling overwhelmed? And secondly is, what's your end goal in terms of how long would you like to be here to make an impact in this world?
Okay. First of all, I get overwhelmed. I get overwhelmed a lot. And that's normal. I mean, I said to you, this Monday I was overwhelmed. And actually, so yesterday I took a day off. I'm very lucky. My partner took a day off too. Everything went on hold. We had a really nice day. We made our own nice, you can't go to a restaurant, but we went to a nice Italian deli. We got some nice things. We made a really nice lunch. We went for a good walk. By the time it was evening, I sort of realized, what? It's like, I'm so happy for my team member. She's moving on to something really fantastic, and she needs stability, and I have a startup. So, we can't compare those things. But, she's enriched us. She's wonderful. We wish her well. And we probably life will give us something that will come along that will be just right as well. And so let it be, so let it be. But if you spoke to me on Monday, I mean, I'm in a spiritual group on Monday evening, and I tell you, my 4 colleagues in my spiritual group, they said, what happened to you? They could see it, it's like they go, you usually have light shining off of your face. What's happened? They were like, something really big happened. And, and it was that just sense of like investing in a person and connecting to a person and feeling it's part of your team. And then there's a loss. Loss. It doesn't mean the person, she's not, she's still around. She can come visit us. She wants to stay in touch. We love her. She loves us. It's all great. But still there's a loss. And the loss is human. And it's like, part of just that, and kind of feeling, all of a sudden I have less resources to do all these things I want to do, that feels daunting. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I get overwhelmed, and I wouldn't want to stand here and say I got somehow special powers. I have human powers, As to time management, I developed a whole system for time management. That is part of what I sell in a way, in terms of what we teach and how, what we coach in and stuff, which is in a topic of one of my books. So, time is a precious resource because, for my personal story, pretty much no one from my grandparents lived to 60. They died between 40 and 60. So my experience as a human being was, I have the genetics of someone who's not going to live long. So I can tell you one of my initial practices in my 20s and my first relationship was half birthdays. We invented half birthday cards. So you get your birthday card, and then 6 months later you get your 23 and a half, because it was my creative way of saying, that means that even if I only live to 50, I actually have 100 birthdays.
Brilliant.
If you see what I mean, right? So, and I wrote that in my first book in the introduction. I said, I did not expect that I would have a long life. And in fact, when my parents were passing the mark of, 50, now 60, I took this gulp and went, maybe they die, who knows, right? And then when they didn't, being a scientist, I went, oh yeah, of course, genetics skips a generation, so I will die. So you can see I'm such a positive person, really. Like, everyone says I'm a very positive person. I don't know, right? So there's some irony there. But I have since then, done a lot of work on limited beliefs. And I really just decided to ditch that one. And this doesn't serve me. I don't need to, work very hard thinking I only have to 50. Like, now my aspiration is, probably 100. So, I think Iris Apfel, this American old lady, she kind of wears these big glasses. She's a sort of a Jewish kind of fashion icon, but she's a lot of different things. She's kind of my role model, she's sort of out and about. She's like sort of in her 90s. She's a fashion model, and it's, you kind of think, seriously, like, how cool. So, so I started to think about it differently. And, and I think it's probably why I called my company Make Time Count, because I sort of said, you have to live feeling like and thinking that today could be your last day. And, some of the people I will meet and I'm very aware that there are people every day who get a bad diagnosis, whose child might get a bad diagnosis, who might lose someone, who, or someone walks out on them, or whatever, shit happens, life happens, right? Mm-hmm. And the point is, like, so you kind of want to live in the moment, but you want to live trusting that you have a lifetime, a very long, generous lifetime. Yeah. So there's a kind of a distance between this achieving, grabbing kind of sense of I must, and a kind of nice sense of I can and I will, and if I don't, that's cool too.
Mm-hmm. Yes, 100%.
Does that make sense?
Yes, yeah, of course. Mm-hmm. And it's, we were talking about health just then, so living till a long age or later age to what we've already known. So luckily, both my grandparents lived till an older age, sort of 80s to 90s. That my grandma passed away in 92. And that's without any health knowledge at all. That's without understanding what we understand today, right? In terms of exercise, nutrition, mindset, etc. Yeah. So with that, I feel that even though my paper age is 45, I feel stronger physically, mentally, spiritually, emotionally than I have ever, even 20s and 30s now. So I think if that's how I feel now, there's a long way to go. Unless, the universe decides to take me and put me on a different path, that's different. But if it's down to biologically living well, I know I'm still here for a long time. I don't know if my kids will really enjoy that, but they know that I'm going to annoy them for a long time yet. So, and I want to be useful for my whole life, not just to people around me, but to myself as well. You know, I never want to be a burden on anyone. I want to be able and fully in control of my thoughts and my body and my feelings the whole time, you know. And if that means I make investments now, so, you know, every day I've never sacrificed that, no matter what financial dire straits we were in. We had to eat well in terms of the quality of the food, etc. Sure. We have to, you know, mind practices, you know, meditation, mindfulness, you know, things that keep us on the balance. You know, like you said, it doesn't happen every day, and it doesn't, every day is different, but always being mindful of that. Training and exercising, moving this body, because we've only been given one, let's look after it to have a long life. And those kind of things, you know, what's my health goal is not to have a unique physique for the beach this summer.
You do look pretty good. You look fit.
Well, you've not seen it's funny because my dad is 74 and he doesn't look older than 50. So I think genetically we have this thing going on. Yeah. And when you have parents, so my dad is doing a walk at the moment. So he's doing a 1,000-mile walk.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he's doing for charity. Over the next 5 months, he wants to walk 1,000 miles and raise £10,000 for charity. Now, when you come from that kind of energy, and I'm like, sometimes I look at my dad and I'm like, Dad, I'm tired looking at you. And I'm quite, you know. So it's that push. And I want to always be an inspiration for my kids, you know, in terms of not inspiration, maybe annoyance more, but to show it's possible. It is possible. We just have to believe, and we have to say it's important for us to live in a certain way. Now, moving forward from here, okay, we talk, you know, you talk about mind, you talk about making things count, understanding you as a person and your voice within and trying to be that. As you were growing up, before you headed down this path and this route, who was the most influential person in your life?
I really would say the first, probably most influential person in my life that I can think of would be a professor from NYU. So I was a young kid, so like still in high school, but I was fascinated with brains, and I don't know how I got the balls to contact him. No idea. I sometimes think like, I don't do that today, you know, and contact people out of the blue. I feel like I've known him down a little bit. And I just said, could I come and could I take a look? And he was an Argentinian, and he had a passion in his eyes and a smile for what he did. And he let me peek down a microscope, and you know, and it's not what I do now. I you know, now I work with people more like in a training, coaching, psychology kind of way. But that sense of someone, I think he must have been at that time in his 50s, and seeing a person like that, to be honest, I had no one in my family that looked that way. That's the sad truth. You know, we were immigrants. My parents worked hard, and they sacrificed a lot, and there was just a lot of pain and sorrow and hardship. So I didn't have people around me who looked on fire with passion and curiosity and enjoyment of something. And to be fair, I met a lot of other professors. I work with a lot of different, you know, academics because of my training. A lot of them are miserable. A lot of them are not loving what they do. A lot of them are suffering and crying and working too hard and, you know, and killing the joy of it all. And the same is true in every profession, right? But that was my moment of inspiration. I think Ephraim Asmithia deserves a medal for that, you know.
Perfect.
Yeah.
And it sounds like that was a big inspiration to your stepping down the academic route to learn about yourself and your mind and how you can set things up and writing and things like this. And it's always interesting when you step back and you understand the root of where that started from, because sometimes you don't know, do you? Sometimes you can start down a path. Actually, I don't know why that interested me, but I've always said that over the first 10 to 15 years of your life, there's so many people that make an impact on you, and that that's what shapes your decision making going forward, isn't it? And I think it's really important to be surrounded by, great people or great information so that we can make life an interesting journey for all of us. Now, before I started the podcast, I said I'm starting a new section to try and lighten the mood, and I think this will be a great time to do this. Right. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to shoot you 10 quick fire questions. Now,
10? Okay.
Yes. So I want little thought. I want a gut reaction. Yes. Whatever it is, whatever comes out, comes out.
I love it. It's like improv. Yeah.
We will just laugh about it afterward, because that's what it is. It's just a way to smile and lighten the mood.
Yes. Okay? Go on.
So let's go. And like I said, they're just different things. So you may not have a straight answer, but just go with it. Right?
Okay. Cool.
Okay. So, who is your favorite cartoon character and why?
I would say Bugs Bunny.
Okay, and why?
Just funny, the whole carrot business. It is just, the little stands of kind of just something I grew up on early, and I just liked it. It had humor, and I think it just had like a bit of heart. The face of the character looks sweet.
Yes, perfect. What's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Oh, okay. Brazil, 1999, little Bahia region kind of market. They, kind of had these kind of corn-like patties, that was fine. They put some beans slapping middle into it and live bugs on top. They had a pot with live bugs, and I was literally like, what? And then I wouldn't have it. I stepped away. My gut reaction was no way. And there was a man in the market who bought me one and gave it to me. And said, try it. And because he gave it to me as a gift of gesture, I had to take one bite, and it was crunchy and cool. But they were crawling literally out of the pot. The whole point of the lid was to keep them down. I still don't know what it was, because the shock of the whole experience was like, oh my God, what did I just do? So yeah, that probably was that. Yeah.
What is your favorite summer activity?
Seaside. Yeah. Empty beach. Hopefully empty beach, and just being able to either walk along it, sit on it, or ideally have great food and wine next to it. Yeah.
If you could be invisible for one day, where would you go?
This is a cool question. I'd just go down my street in my neighborhood. I feel like I never really... Yeah, I think I just would do what I normally do and sort of get a different perspective on things, being invisible. Yeah.
If you could trade your life with anyone for one day, who would it be and why?
For one day, I'd trade it with an artist who paints or sculpts. Because I think
Name one.
Day you can...
Name one.
There's so many people come to mind, but like David Hockney, or something. I would just sort of be in a studio, be in a proper studio. I don't care what artist it is. I just want to be in a studio for a day. That'd be awesome.
What is the thing you're most afraid of?
Well, right now I am actually, so it's really interesting. I would say in the last 10 years or so, I reached, and this is really kind of reach in quotes, a level of spirituality where I felt death was okay. Like I was so at peace with death. It was a little bit scary almost. It's kind of like, I've been here, I've done enough good, like it's okay, And lately I am finding myself so in love with my partner that I actually feel that I've become afraid of death yet again. So it kind of tells me two things. It tells me that I love deeply, and it tells me that life is precious, So it's not that I'm really afraid, but it's like a new dimension where I basically go, I don't want to go just yet, I'm kind of really, really, really loving life. So that's, yeah.
That's beautiful. If you could be world famous for one thing, what would you be famous for?
Probably helping people love themselves enough.
What new technology do you think will transform the future?
Well, I do think augmented reality and VR will transform the future, for sure. However, we're going to watch Strange Days, this film from 1995 again this weekend, and I am deadly afraid of, the kind of Black Mirror sort of side of technology and what it can do. So I kind of feel like it will transform our lives. I'm not always sure whether that's for the better, but that's, like everything else. There's always good and bad in it.
Yeah. On a scale of 1 to 10, how cool are you?
Cool. Well, I'd probably say I'm a 7. I think our daughter would disagree.
Or like
you're a 2. You're a 2. But the thing is that it's not a measure that I sort of keep in my mind, if that makes sense. Yeah. I kind of feel that cool is very defined differently to me than I think it is.
No, there's no depth to that question. It was just a quick question. And if you wrote a book about your life, what would it be called?
Like a kind of a memoir kind of book. Like, the first thing that comes to mind is From Surviving to Thriving. I know it sounds kind of cliche, but I really do think that my life early on was really just sheer survival. Mm-hmm. And I feel like it's not that now.
Yes. There you go. So that was the end of your quick.
That was 10 questions. Wow, that felt like 7 questions. Okay, great. Lovely.
And how do you know how I keep count? Because I forget sometimes. I do on my fingers.
You do it on your fingers. Yeah. Nice.
That's the only reason I know it's
bless. Lovely.
So, imagine your school days. You remember when we used our fingers to do certain things?
No. When I help people, so that's for interviews and things, and they go, "What are your 3 strengths?" I have 3 fingers, so you're making sure you mentioned 3. So I know what you mean.
Yes. Yeah. So just a quick acknowledgement for you, Magdalena. Mm-hmm. I'd like to say thank you at this point. I think you've just shared honestly with us. There's so many more things that I know that we can have conversation with, and I want you to come back onto this because there's so much knowledge that I want to share, and there's so many new things that I have been planned that I know we can spend time talking about and hopefully move forward with that. Now, as we head towards the end of this podcast, there's a couple more questions that I'd like to ask you so people get a little bit of a deeper understanding about you and the type of person you are and how you think. Mm-hmm. So now we've reached the end of your days. We talked about the end of days, let's talk about 100 plus. So let's say 150 as a nice ballpark figure for you. Yeah?
I love it. Oh, yes,
gosh. Yeah. So
completely with, a working brain and hopefully not too much.
Everything.
Right. Got it.
You have reached your last moments. Now, there's not enough energy to speak, but you have enough energy to write 3 words. Now, these 3 words have helped you all your life. They've resonated with you, and you hope by sharing them, they can help other people on their journey. What would those 3 words be for you?
Love, compassion, and balance.
And can you go into each one a little bit?
Love, as in self-love, most of all. Not just love of others. I think that's what gets you in trouble. So love of self, respect for self, incredible. Compassion, because of what we started with. We are too harsh. We are too harsh with each other, but I think that starts with self-compassion towards that inner voice, and that gives you the softness and the empathy and a kind of deeper dimension of being that you trust life. You start to trust life, and I think that's really important. And balance, because without balance, everything goes tits up. It really does. So it's not, I think it's just the practical, productive element of everything is balance. So, yeah.
And it's the first one you mentioned there, self-love. And I think the most important thing I've learned about that is only when you love yourself truly can you welcome or accept love into your life, whichever form that is, whether that be through other people, whether that be through other environments. And when you have this this grounding within yourself to know you have value, you trust yourself, and you value yourself, can you then accept that environment into your life? We get pulled about and we get thrown about all our life as we grow up. And then I think we reach a point where like, I'm not taking that anymore. I choose to live my life in this way.
Liberation.
Liberation is true though, isn't it? We can,
Yes.
as we're young, we get pulled about by parents and then by friends and then by, lots of things, work, employers, people, friends, etc. And then I think we get to a middle point where we're like, I'm not taking this bullshit no more. I'm actually going to live my life this way. And if people like it, they do. And if they don't, they can bugger off. And that's why I think, as we get older, we have our close people start ending up on one or two hands, in terms of people.
True. Yeah.
I think that we've begun to trust ourselves and we don't need that metric of numbers anymore. Remember at school, it's how many friends you had and how many people you knew. And now it's how many people you don't know. And I like that. I like having value as opposed to quantity.
Yes.
Now, this podcast was called Bigger Than the Hustle. And right now you're bigger than the world. So I've got a mic and I've connected it to 7.58 billion people on this planet. They can all hear you. They all understand you. There's no language barrier. They're all conscious and awake and they're plugged in, ready for your message. I'm going to give you this mic for the next 30 seconds. What would your message be to the world?
I would say follow your heart. Trust that your path will emerge for you. Even if other people find it earlier, don't be put off. Your life will find you.
Thank you so much for not just that grounding message, but the energy you've put into this today and the energy that's come through via our conversation, the words we've exchanged. And I really, really, really enjoy these conversations. And I've said openly before that another reason I started this podcast was to connect with people like you, and also because these kind of conversations I love, because even though by sharing it a lot of people can get out of it, I get so much out of it, and I get so much from it. Makes me spark up, it brightens my day up as well, so I can be more productive, more loving and more caring for the people around me. So thank you for being part of that journey. Thank you for coming on and coming onto this platform to allow you to share your message. Just before we go, is there anything else you'd like to say?
I just want to thank you because, in speaking to you, when we articulate our own beliefs, we reaffirm them. And so, I have it's been like my meditation to be in conversation with you. So it's a two-way process, and I look forward to getting to know you more. And I hope, lots of people get enriched by your project and what you do.
Yeah. And like I said, it's if we put the right intention behind anything, the outcome can only be what it's meant to be, right? However big or small or positive it needs to be. I think it's all about intention, and it's our intention and the way we come into the world. It's not just in this, but everything. If we have a good heart with everything we do, the universe protects us because it needs people like us to share our views and our thoughts. Yeah.
That is very true.
Perfect. So, I am Bhavik Patel. I was your host today, and just a few thoughts to leave you with before we go. Big thoughts lead to big ideas lead to big actions, and big actions lead to a bigger life. So keep thinking big. Until next week, goodbye.
Do the best you can, best you know how, and just enjoy it. Like, honestly, we're just not here for long enough. We just are. So you have to enjoy as much as you can.